provides a summary of the 23 audits completed by internal audit between February and March 2019, as well as information about allegations of fraud and theft, which have been notified to the Head of Service, Audit and Technical. The interim report was also considered by the senior leadership team on the 15th of May 2019. Section 2 of the report provides a breakdown of the 23 completed audits between the 4 levels of assurance and between planned and unplanned work. The final position against the audit plan and the Head of Service, Audit and Technical's overall conclusion as to the effectiveness of the control environment in the Council are contained in the annual report, which is the next item on the agenda. I would draw your attention to Section 4 and Appendix A2, which provide details of the 4 new audits where we provided red or red amber levels of assurance, including an executive summary for each audit. The relevant chief officers have accepted the findings and recommendations for each of these audits, and we have received completed action plans which contain details of the required actions and dates of implementation. Follow-up audits will be undertaken in the next 3 months, and the results of these will be reported to the Audit Committee in September. Section 5 and Appendix A4 provide details of the current position in respect of all the follow-up audits. No follow-up audits were completed during this period. The recommendation is that the Audit Committee notes the report, and I'll be pleased to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Questions? Is it gentlemen? Donna?
Into Appendix 2A, and we've got 2 POW, we've got the Investigation B, Information and Governance, and Income Maximisation Unit. I'll start with Investigation B, and I'm just going to ask how far down the alphabet we are. I'm assuming Investigation A's taken place previously. Are we is Investigation C in progress? Because I know that's limited information, and it does say in a further report that we'll get more detail on that closed investigation in September. But I'd just like some idea of how many investigations we've got ongoing or that have taken place. Because I don't remember Investigation A coming in front of us, to be honest.
If I can provide some clarification, we're up to C, so we're not that far down the test, and we will restart for next year. Whenever we get asked to do any sort of work on an investigation, we just give it a letter, to be honest. Investigation A was a piece of work we were asked to look at initially. Once we carried out an initial assessment, it was decided it would be investigated by the department concerned with support from us as required. The amount of time we spent on that was minimal, so we haven't recorded it as part of the work we've sent to yourselves. Investigation B is self-explanatory. Investigation C is ongoing, and I think that's mentioned in the annual report in Appendix 4 as ongoing. So that's where we are at the moment.
I'll come back to POW then. So can I have some more detail around this? Because obviously all of this really is around financial controls within POW, isn't it? So I know that you're saying there's no loss of money, there's no risk of loss, but if we haven't got the right financial controls in place, I could sit here questioning, well, are we at the point where we haven't properly invoiced? You know, have people actually had their invoices? Have we had a change in tenants? you know, so I just like a bit more information with regards to what type of financial controls, and also with regards to the funding bids. It's saying that they were not managed as projects, and I know part of our mitigation of risk here is the project management handbook, or toolkit, or whatever we're calling it. So I would have to ask the question of why isn't that being used when it's in place, and that's what we're seeing here, and we've been told that's our mitigation. And when you look through other projects that are being delayed and not managed, is that because the project management handbook isn't being used? So, you know, I'm looking at this, looking at a recommendation where we just go straight to the chief exec, to be honest. So any information would be greatly appreciated, please.
David?
Thank you, Chair. If I, just for the benefit of everybody, taking account of sort of the members' questions there, just to remind everybody, this was a scheduled audit. The overall aim of the audit was that to what extent TPAR's aimed at aspiration or supported by effective systems of financial control. It's important to note, as Councillor Davis pointed out, that the audit did not identify any significant material losses or errors. The red level of assurance is due to the lack of awareness of some key financial controls, more than deliberate non-compliance. It was more lack of awareness and ignorance and of some of the things that were required. The Chief Officer Housing and Economy and the managers involved have responded positively to the report's recommendations. An action plan has been received, and it indicates that a start is already being made on to address the issues, which we welcome. As a red audit, of course, as my colleague Michael said, it'll be a follow-up audit will be conducted within 3 months to determine the extent to which the high priority recommendations are being addressed, and the results of that will be reported to the September audit committee. Concerning the 5 high priority recommendations, if I can deal, I'll come back to number 1 first, if I may, Chair, and in so doing I think I'll address some of the questions that Councillor Davis has raised. If I don't, then please come back at the end. But control objective 2 that you can see there on the top of page 135, there's a need for further to further improve the effectiveness of financial controls. There's a system of tills in use in the centre for the payment of income for car parks, for the bar, for shop sales and so on. In total, the amount of cash, I'm talking about cash sales rather than card sales paid for that, is around about 30,000 a year. What we found out, there was a need for improved basic controls there, such as daily account for the cash, for evidencing of it, for separation of duties, record keeping, but it's important to stress that the test we did not identify any significant shortages there. Also linked to that was the car parks. You might be aware that there's 4 pay stations there by which most people paying in the car park pay the money there. We identified a need there to improve the controls to ensure that the cash received from those machines through the system, through the contracted security company that collects the money, to make sure that is reconciled to the amount recorded on the software system of the pay stations. Again, we didn't find any evidence that it's not, but there is a scope of weakness there, which we have understood that can be a problem with that type of car park system, not that particular make, but generally with car park systems of that nature. There's no suggestion that such a shortage has occurred here, but there's necessary. We need controls in place to provide that assurance that that's not the case. As far as funding bids, they're being managed as projects. This was particularly with reference to the leading and curating of the otherwise successful Wales in Venice, as we understand. It was what we're recommending is as has been said, that in future this should be managed in compliance with the Council's project management toolkit. There were one-off activities that have implications for other services in the council, and part of the purpose of the project management toolkit or the project management system is that it flags up in advance any support that would be required from other services such as finance, HR, ICT. Nothing, to our knowledge, at this date, it is a bit early to say, has gone wrong with this, but that's largely through the intervention of officers from the finance department, and that's cost quite some time. If they follow the project management process, then a risk assessment, a formal risk assessment would have been necessary, which would have flagged up the issues in advance. Again, they've agreed that it's not going to water under the bridge, sorry, there's a pun there, Dennis, but they have agreed, acknowledging the need for that for any future projects. Control Objective 5, very simply, there was no complete inventory of assets there, which increases the risk that items could not be accounted for. They've already started to put the inventory together. Which brings me back to Control Objective 1, where we said there's a need to further improve the financial controls overall, making officers more aware of the financial procedure rules and other key governance requirements, and the need for compliance with these. The reason we've said that is because of the things I've already talked about, the other high priority recommendation areas, but also other things we found in the audit, which, although not quite so critical in themselves, still have a significant overall effect on the management of TPARO. And it's really the need for good financial practice. So some of these areas, certain aspects of budgetary control and income monitoring, where there seems to be an over-reliance on the finance department. Not that the finance department don't have a role there, but I think sometimes some of the officers in TPARO need to be more aware of their own, of what they should be doing themselves there. There was some lack of understanding of procurement rules, which again, they acknowledge that they're learning from that. And there was also some delays in raising invoices. We didn't find any evidence of invoices not having been raised, but there was evidence of delays in raising them. There was also other recommendations for improved financial practices for the shop and the bar, for events and for venue hire, and there was also the need for an operational risk register as well. I don't know if I've covered both the things that Councillor Davis raised, but that's a basic of the audit. Thank you.
Please, Anna.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it is really worrying because it goes back to, you're talking from basic stuff like bank reconciliation through to accountability through roles and responsibilities. So in that, a lot can go wrong there, can't it? Yeah, I would really like some reassurance on the senior leadership team really, and potentially from the Chief Exec, that this project management toolkit is actually in operation and actually being used. Because we've just changed our senior leadership team's restructure now on the basis that where projects sat with executive directors before, they don't sit with executive directors now. The performance team are taking the lead under the chief exec, with the chief officers, taking the accountability within. So I'm really concerned this project management toolkit might be getting lost in that new restructure within the within the roles and accountability. So I'm really seeking reassurance on that, because if we can't manage projects, we're not going to, our reputation's at risk then, isn't it? We're not going to be able to apply for bids because potentially we're not going to be successful in those bids. So yeah, really concerned about that, and I'd like to see the action plan as well when that's available.
Yeah, in terms of project management, longer-standing members of the audit committee will know that's a regular audit that we do. You've already agreed that forms part of the 1920 audit plan, and one of the key parts of that will be looking at compliance with the project handbook. As one of the officers in the council who's involved in various services, I do get regular emails about projects, so it is being used. I have to say to everything it was, but you need assurance that it's being used for every project which is classified as a project. So that's something we will put back to you.
We don't get the risk registers otherwise if that's not used, we don't get it all the way through.
Is there some alternative action can be taken corporately to ensure compliance? Sort of add or to underpin?
Yeah, I mean, as a member of the new senior leadership team, we tenants and where they're up to. And there are still new projects going on and being discussed. We talked about one yesterday. So I think I'd echo what Paul said, that the actual use of the project management is actually better now than it has been and is under the new structure. It's just that this is sort of a gap in this particular area. So I don't think there's by all means, you can ask the Chief Executive for assurance because it falls within that area now, but my experience of it over the last few months is that it is continuing to be utilised, but it's just a pocket here that's missed it.
Maybe just one final question for me. Yeah, I would like to see that reassurance from the Chief Exec, and it's linked back to this new structure that we've put in place from the 1st of April. I think, you know, we need that reassurance in place. Can I also ask as well, you mentioned in your response that some invoices have been delayed. Have we got assurance that all invoices have actually been issued to the tenants whilst they were tenanting? Because there has been a change of tenants. So if there was invoices that were delayed, potentially we're at risk of not being able to invoice those tenants as they're no longer there. And I'm really concerned, and you know, it goes into the last report, really, doesn't it, about the sustainability of TPAO. I'm bordering on that at the moment, but I'd like some reassurance around that as well, please.
The comment I made about the invoice being delayed, that wasn't tenants, it was for venue hire and use of the venues and so on. I can't really comment much more on the invoice for rents. I think I can't say that.
The process that's been gone through during the year is around agreeing better terms with the new tenants, then to move to lease agreements so that the tenants have sight of those and take legal advice on them, and then once those leases are in place, then the invoicing commences. So that's taken a bit of time during the year to work through with assets and legal and with finance together with the TPAO staff. In terms of whether somebody's there or not, then that doesn't stop invoices being raised. So if somebody's left, then there will still be invoices and those will still be being pursued through the normal processes of the authority.
This is quite a big project, and I would have expected us to have had all these things in place, to be honest with you, before we started. It wasn't something that was landed on our feet. It wasn't a splash magic type of situation. We planned for it, and I'm really concerned that it seems to not have been fully up and running when it was meant to be, and we're playing catch up, it seems. And that is deeply concerning, I think, that we're, you know, I don't know whether TPAO has a dedicated finance officer, but you would expect somebody who had control of the finances to be on top of some of these issues, or all of these issues, and not seeing some of these gaps emerge. And it sounds like we're playing catch-up, and I don't understand why we're playing catch-up when we knew this was happening, and we were planning to do this for years. It's a big project. We put £851,000 into this on top of the Arts Council money in the past year. You know, that's revenue, not capital spend. So I guess I'm asking, how did we get caught out as a council on this? There's been mention of significant input by Audit into this. Has Audit recovered that significant time and presumably money that they put into monitoring and additional work? And things like inventories. You know, when you start a new venture, you should know exactly what you've got. It's inconceivable that you wouldn't have a comprehensive inventory. And I'm staggered, you know, and I just wonder how this has happened. You know, it's on our watch as an audit committee. So how has it happened?
Yeah, I think that I mean, all the points that have been picked up today are certainly highly relevant and beg certain questions. I think you know, in you know, that stock answer is we are where we are, and we have a report to consider on our agenda today. There's a whole list of issues I think which need to be considered. I've also received an email from a member of the public that's listed 8 queries and detailed queries and questions, not for us, but certainly to my mind a matter for scrutiny. I think, as I understand it, it's due for consideration by scrutiny on the 13th, is it 13th or the 20th of June? 13th of June, and I think that a message needs to go from this committee to scrutiny committee, highlighting our concerns and some of the concerns that have sprung out from the assessment that's taken place. I don't think, as in terms of having reference to our terms of reference, we can go into the detail here, but I think it's necessary that we raise our eyebrows, raise our concerns with an expectation of scrutiny. We'll consider these issues in considerable detail and perhaps come back.
Yeah. I think, you know, that in terms of you as an audit committee and receiving the results of an internal review, of which there's many taking place from external audit, then you know, the terms of reference is that you have updates on the work of internal audit, including key findings, issues of concern, actions in hand, and then the process that we have is that where things come out as a red risk, then they will go back in 3 months and they will update you as to whether those things have been addressed, and if not, then you have the head of chief officer here to hold them to account on that. So I think that's the process from the audit committee perspective, and given that there is this scrutiny committee which is looking at the performance last year and the business plan going forward, then it fits into their remit for 2 weeks' time, and we can pass the questions that have come in to them as well, really.
Makes more sense. Dan?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I think there's a bigger problem here, because if we go on to the next report, the information governance, there's also an issue there with project management on oversight arrangements, and also there seems to be a commitment issue or a lack of roles and responsibilities within the project team. He's talking about the project board meetings there that should take place regularly, and sufficient members should attend to provide effective oversight. So I'm convinced we need to discuss, you know, we've got an issue on 2 assurance reports here, and the red, amber, where there's an issue around, well, significant issues around project management and project management teams and roles and responsibilities, and I think we've got no option but to report that to the chief exec. That's my view. I also have a concerns with the income maximisation unit report, and I'd like some detail on that, because it's an income maximisation unit and we can't manage the service fee collections and we can't manage third-party funds. So I'm confused with that one.
Just in terms of projects handbook, I share your concerns. Without going forward into the next report, which is the annual report that I produce, in there I do give you assurance on the overall control environment, but I also give you some qualifications as to the opinion. So what I'm looking for there are any serious issues or trends that we're picking up from the work that we do. And in there, I have said that one of the qualifications is about improving evidence of compliance with corporate policies and procedures. Now they include financial procedure rules, so things like being picked up on T-Power, about T-ships, formerly FTAs, also contract procedures and the project management handbook. So I've recommended that goes into the action plan for the AGS for 1920. Then that will be monitored and we come to you as an audit committee to look at progress. So I share your concerns, I have picked up on them, and it will be going forward on that basis. In terms of apprenticeships, Mike?
Just to sort of say something on the project management on the information governance. It's a different kind of issue there, because it was all set up in accordance with the project management handbook. But it's been a project that's taken a long time to develop. It's a very complex project with involvement of health and all these things. And over time, some of the attendance at the project board meetings has sort of diminished, and that was what we were flagging up in this, that because you're getting near to a fairly critical deadline, which was the other aspect of it, about the in terms of contingency plans and testing contingency plans. It was just to flag up really that at this stage the oversight of the project needs to be sort of it needs to be sort of working well, and it wasn't. So this is just what we were flagging up. But it's not really it's not non-compliance with the project management handbook. It's just as the project progresses, things get in the way, and it's just a sort of reminder call to say you need to refocus on this. So sorry, on the appointeeships, it was fee collection and non-compliance with the financial procedure rules over the way that funds were being managed, and they just weren't being managed in the normal way that the financial procedure rules state. That's right. So there was no sort of evidence of financial loss or anything like that, but it was just, as you say, it's not non-compliance with the procedures.
In terms of assurance, I'm a little bit split on this, because I think that when we look at the reports going forward, there is a bit of a division between non-compliance with policy generally. It's a recurring theme on the audit committee, and that will always be a recurring theme, and that's kind of underpinned by disciplinary procedures and other procedures. But compliance with the council's project management handbook is, to my mind, is significantly different, and it is what it is. And without having seen the council's project management handbook, but having a lot of experience of the project and corporate project management per se, it's there, and the expectation is that there will be compliance. And within that, there'll be catch-all procedures around financial compliance and the other policies which are brought into the project management handbook. And it has a sense of manana, that somebody might come back later on. Whereas I'm just speculating, and it's a matter for committee, whether we need somebody to come to this committee to give us assurances that the compliance with the project management handbook is going in the right direction, that it is disciplined in terms of how officers and the corporate body respond and develop projects. It's just a concern that I've got. And certainly as the organisation goes through this process of change, and there will be inevitably an increased reliance upon shared strategic responsibilities, of which projects are central features of that. It's generally it's not a new feature of council business, but it's a developing feature of council business, whether we need to be on it and receive high level assurances that this work's being done.
Well, I take your point. Really, you're reiterating what I'm putting into my annual report. It's one of the reasons why you and senior management agreed the audit plan for 1920. One possible way forward you've got is if we bring forward the project management audit for the next 2 to 3 months. It's in period 3 at the moment. If we bring it forward, we do that focusing on compliance with the handbook, and then we report to you in September as part of the audit committee report. Then you've got the option there. If that comes
Yeah.
out as showing red or red amber assurance, you can always pull some mutual accounts.
That's a
That's a
good offer.
possibility.
That's a good offer.
I'll move that, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, pretty quite happy with that, Rodney.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As you said, it's going to scrutiny the list on the 13th, I think, isn't it? And I think the concerns of this committee should go forward to the scrutiny committee as well. Plus this report, and possibly even, as you say, someone can explain the situation to the scrutiny committee, how this situation has happened, which I'm sure will happen. But I think a lot of this really needs in-depth scrutiny, because the business plan came to scrutiny, the first one, concerns were raised by EBISC. The second, and then it was withdrawn or whatever happened to it. The exec board put their own financial plan in place, and even the lead member came along to the scrutiny committee. Couldn't remember the first financial plan coming in place, but I really do think it is, as Donna say, that the chief exec should be getting involved with the management issues around this.
So we've got an offer from Paul. From our point of view, I mean you're absolutely right, Rodney, that the message needs to go from audit. We expect a detailed coverage of these particular issues around that particular project, and we would expect a response to come back to this committee in terms of assurances, detailed assurances. We've got an offer from Paul to bring forward the audit of the compliance with the project handbook, and can I suggest, can I put that to the floor? We're quite happy for that to happen. I'd make that recommendation, Dan.
Yeah, I'm more than happy with that, because as Paul said, as the officer said, if it comes back red, amber, then obviously we've got serious questions to ask then, haven't we?
Yeah.
Can I also ask as well, in Appendix 3A, where we've got the green, amber assurances, there's quite a number there that are medium priority and one high priority, and it does say in your report the chief officers need to implement recommendations within a specific time frame. Do we ever get to hear on the green ambers whether that time frame has been met, or do we need some information being fed back? Because what I'm looking at now is we're very focused on the red ambers as a audit committee, but what we don't want to do is for the green ambers to move into the red amber position. So do we need to be having some feedback into audit with regards to whether those timeframes are actually being met and those recommendations are being implemented? Is that worth us having that information?
I'd love to be able to do it.
Yeah, I just want to jump in there really, because the capacity that there is in the internal team, the capacity compared to other authorities, and clearly we're under pressure moving forward into next year. So just the high priority ones, the red ones, they are following up. They will look at whether the previous recommendations have been implemented. But to have a bigger administrative burden diverting away from doing new audits, I don't think the benefits would be there.
Sorry, I was taking your word literally. I was, Paul, in your 7.2 in your conclusions, because you did say in there about further works also required in the areas where green amber level of assurance has been given, subject to the improvement. So I was just picking that up as a member of the audit committee, but we'll keep an eye on that from the future reports we get. Thank you.
Well, yeah. Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of things, Dana. A couple of meetings previously, we had a discussion, all of us, and you were advocating not to deal with anything other than red or red amber, because I was raising issues to do with green and the like. And after the discussion, everybody agreed that you were correct. Concentrate on red and red amber. So I understand what going, that's been raised. That's just from minor point. I'm more interested on this investigation A, B or C. Obviously I understood what our learned colleague said about investigation A, but tell me if I'm wrong. My understanding would be if it's down on the internal audit, so investigation A, I would expect it to appear on the report in front of this committee, irrespective of whatever the decision was. So, am I right or am I wrong?
If I can take the question from Councillor Davis, she's absolutely right. It does say there in paragraph 7.2 that focus on green amber is required. If I can just explain a little bit there, sometimes where we're on the border between red amber or green amber, what we will do is, if we can see there has been evidence of improvement whilst we've been doing the audit, we will give the benefit of the doubt to the chief officer, as long as they give us assurance that they are actually going to implement those recommendations. And usually that is where we've got another means of going back to it and auditing it again. So we don't tend to leave them if they're on that border. In terms of investigation A from Councillor Roberts, I am supposed to account for all the part-time to yourselves. We do get a lot of requests for help, assistance, advice. We will get drawn into investigations at the start, and then the time taken isn't material in terms of the overall work that we do. I just lump that together as advice that we give. What I know, investigation A is still ongoing in the department. There are a lot of investigations done in the departments now, especially with regard to disciplinary action. I'm not saying that's the case for this one. I can give you further information, but to me, there are lots of different items. I could give you a list of 30 or 40 different things that we do. But if that's information that you want, then I can do that. Investigation B, as I said, I can't give you any more details at the moment. I've had to give you details on it because we have had to defer some work that was in the 1819 plan. So if I didn't tell you why it was deferred, you'd ask me questions about that. And then investigation C is ongoing, as I said. So I hope that answers the question.
A little bit like clear as mud to me personally. I asked the question, I said, was that an internal audit? So to me it's a yes or no answer. If it's a yes, I would expect it to appear on a report to come in front of this committee. If it's a no, it doesn't appear on the report. So it's a yes or a no. That's straightforward question, really.
Okay, it's a no, because we didn't actually do it.
Okay. Any more questions on item 11? Okay, well, we are recommending that the audit committee notes the report with the amendment to procedural amendment that we've agreed to bring forward that consideration of project management. So we're quite happy to note the report. Thank you very much indeed.